Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me here today. We will do a seated yang practice. There will also be a standing yang practice to accompany this one that is a little variation of pretty much all the same moves, and both of them function to help us have more consistent habits. So they're two short practices, with the idea being that a shorter practice is easier to insert into your day without too much stress or any need for equipment or to drastically change our routines. In terms of traditional Chinese medicine, this is the 5th season, sometimes called late summer. And I like to think of this as a great time of year where routines stick better and feel more natural. You know, we sort of get this longing to get a back to school feeling, get into our regular routines. It's finally not too hot to sleep at night, depending on where you are. I don't make any promises, but usually it's a little bit cooler in the nights in August. The sun sets a little earlier, it rises a little bit later, and often we feel like we can get a handle on our goals much better as the summer progresses. So if one of your goals is more consistent movement, this video is for you. You may be like me, a little on the short leg side, and you would like a couple blocks under your feet. Depends as well on what kind of chair you have. Ideally, since we'll be doing movements of the arms, a chair with really big arms, we can often hit our funny bone on the arms of the chair. So just be careful if that is you, if you have that kind of chair at home. Safer to have a chair with sticky feet or even on top of your yoga mat so we're not sliding all over the floor. And then in terms of any other chair preferences, you might like a chair that's a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit softer, harder, whatever it is, but we should be able to sit tall to work on our posture while we're here. We start with a brief mindful check-in, option to close the eyes. We might need to do some fidgets to settle in, roll the shoulders out, a little stretch in one direction or another. And then when we're ready to settle in, coming into stillness, focusing now on the movement of our breath. See if we can feel the expansion of our rib cage, front, side, and back. We may feel our breath moving up to our collarbones, the upper back, our shoulder blades. Maybe it feels as though our breath is in the sides of the waist or the low back. And of course, feeling the movement of the breath in the belly. If we're quite tight through our abdominal muscles, see if we can soften them a little bit here. So yes, we need our abs to help us sit tall, but if it feels kind of tense and stressed out, see if we can loosen them up a little bit. Or maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum, you feel too loose in your belly, the abdominal muscles aren't holding you up. Let's draw them in slightly so that we can sit tall. Scanning the body, noticing how you're feeling, seeing if there's any area of the body that needs to be treated with a special touch today, anything that's really craving movement, or anything else that's going on, marking off those feelings, sensations, or areas in your own mind. Because anytime we come to a movement practice, we can customize it for our own needs right here, right now, today. And when we're ready to get moving, we can open the eyes. And again, we might want to let in some fidgets to wake ourselves up. And let's match our breath to our movement. Inhale, sweeping arms to sky. Exhale, bringing hands back to heart center. We'll do a fair number of movements of the arms today. So let's check in with the range of motion of our shoulders, the comfort of our shoulders, Any popping, cracking, or creakiness or stiff feelings? Just something to make note of. All right, the next time we have hands at heart center, pausing there. Let's interlace our fingers or clasping in any way that's comfortable. Stretching forward, we'll round our backs, tucking tailbone under, tucking chin for our cat stretch. And then let's turn palms to the sky, hitchhiking our thumbs behind us for cow. Untucking our tailbone, creating length through the back of the legs, length through our abdominal muscles, and a little bit of length through the throat, front of the neck area. Let's flow back and forth. My personal preference is to take a breath in as I reach into cat. Exhale, use my abdominal muscles to stabilize the movement as I switch to the back position, and then inhale while I'm here in cow. I like how that feels. You can try it out for yourself, or breathing any way that feels natural or useful. We'll go through quite a few times. Get everything loosened up. And we may find that as we do our first few, we're stiff, and then we gradually loosen up. We can do a larger range of motion. Okay, last one here. We'll release our arms down by our sides, and let's come into lateral flexion or a side bend. So let's really stretch those fingertips down, slide our shoulders away from our ears. We can imagine that our necks get longer. When I teach this to little kids, we imagine that we have a crown on our heads, and we're stretching our crown up towards the sun so that the jewels can glimmer in the sunlight better. So we're going to keep stretching our fingers down on one hand as we reach up and lengthen up on the other hand. And as we did before, we'll take a breath in, breathe out to switch, and then take a breath in our side bend. So our arms are working in opposition. Obviously, one is stretching up, the other is stretching down, but both shoulder blades continue to pull down away from our ears. Or sometimes we think shoulder blades to back pockets, if that makes sense, or letting the weight of the world go from our shoulders. Shoulders are loose and relaxed. And it may feel natural here to turn the head side to side or to keep the head forward. And usually we think of this as expansion for the rib cage, but it's actually work for our abdominal muscles. We breathe out as we come back through center, and the side of the abs really have to work. We'll go once more each side. Coming back through center, and we're ready to twist. Often our twists are these big fancy movements involving our arms, and I always like to start small. Same as with our cat and cow, maybe we're a little creaky when we begin our twists. So we'll start with our ribs, and sometimes people prefer hands to heart center or fingertips on the chest because we want to be sure that our rib cage is twisting to the side, and then coming back through center, twisting to the side, and then coming back through center. Instead of just moving our arms, and our torso stays the same. And again, it depends on what kind of chair you have. So we might have our fingertips up here if you're finding that your elbows are knocking into your chair, or hands at heart center. Just, reasonable. We don't want to knock ourselves on the arms or the back of the chair. And then as we feel ourselves warming up, moving through this range of motion, strong muscles of our back pulling us into our twist, we can add our arms if we like. Usually we inhale up and then exhale to come into our twist. Inhaling up and exhaling into our twist. So we can use our chair for a little support and stability. If you do have arms on your chair, sometimes it's nice to have one hand resting there for support or to reach both hands towards the arm of the chair. So every chair is a little bit different. Generally, when I teach, we use this kind of folding chair, and most people have a similar style of kitchen chair at home with no arms. So I'm sure if you do a lot of chair yoga, you will have your favorite chair. We'll make this our last one here. We'll come back to our twists afterwards to hold and pause for longer to get a deeper stretch. For now, let's get into some movements of our arms and our legs together. And depending on who you are, you may be taking feet off the block, so that's what I do. And then I actually turn diagonally on my chair because it gives me a little bit more freedom of movement, and the corner of the chair is a little bit more stability. So we'll do a variation of sunflowers and moonflowers. Please know that if you still want blocks under your feet, you can do that. Or if you want to fuss with your chair for a minute, that's always an option too. All right, we're going to inhale arms up and out into a variation of 5-pointed star, and then exhale, elbows into ribs. So we'll get our legs involved in two ways. First, we're going to push down into our feet. Maybe we're hovering off the chair, or maybe we're just pushing so that, let's say if we're not pushing, 100% of our body weight is on the chair, and we're going to push so that only 95% of our body weight is on the chair. And then some of us might be doing quite a big lift, so I will leave that up to you to decide how much we're pushing into our legs, letting our arms and legs rest at any time. Let's do 3 more here. Last one like this. And then let's come into our sun flow. So we're going to draw the shape of the sun with our fingertips, and we're hinging forward, challenging our core strength as we come front. And like we just did in our moonflowers, some of us will like to come off the chair, but if you like to stay seated the whole time, of course, that's fine. One other option too is to take the hands down the front of the shins. Some people prefer how that helps set their alignment, and they're more able to connect with the muscles of the legs to feel sensation of stretch through the outside of the leg. Last one like this. We'll bring hands back to heart center, and let's work on our ankles. So now instead of pressing into our heels, we're lifting our heels, pressing into our toes. We can spread our fingers wide. That'll probably help us to be better able to spread our toes wide. So we're creating some tightness down the calf muscle, down the back of the leg. Let's lift both heels at the same time. Lift and lower. Let's lift and hold. Hold just for 3, 2, 1. We release. And then let's give our calf muscles a little stretch. I'll turn side so you can better see my feet, I think. You can turn however it makes sense for you. We're just going to lift and lower our toes. And then the challenge is to lower our toes silently. So this muscle in the front of the shin tends to be a little sleepy. So a lot of people, when I introduce them to this kind of work, the feet slap down and make noise. Let's see if we can silently tap, or not even tap and just hover. And we might want to stretch the legs out straight as well, increasing the amount that we can point and flex. And some of us will like to point and flex through our wrists as well to get some mobility in the upper body. All right, we'll let this go. We'll walk our feet back in. Let's do flowing chest expansion. And then a couple more poses, and then pretty much that's it. So we'll take our thumbs up to the sky and then hitchhike back. Probably inhaling up and exhaling back, although you might like the breath a little bit different. You could do it backwards. But generally, if we're matching our breath to our movement, that gives the feeling in mind and body that we are balanced energetically, helps us to connect better with what's going on in our bodies. Okay, last one here, thumbs up, reach back. We'll release our hands, and similar to our sun flow, we'll do a seated swan dive. I prefer to have my feet on the floor for this one. You may even like 1 foot up and 1 foot down. All right, so we inhale up, arms overhead, and then we're hinging from the hips so our spine stays flat as we come down to the floor. Maybe we're tapping the floor or the sides of the shin, and then we reverse. Tapping hands overhead and tapping down to the floor. Again, I'll show us from the side so you can see what I mean. That our spine stays straight. We're not rounding towards the floor like our cat. We're staying straight, chest is lifted. We could even think to ourselves, oh, this is an abdominal stretch. I'm trying to stretch my abs as long as possible. It's a balance challenge. And our glutes, the muscles of our bum get a little bit of work too, which is great. If we're seated in a chair, even for an exercise practice, it can be kind of tricky for our low back because our low back muscles aren't ideally stacked, or they're not working in as ideal a fashion sitting in a chair as they otherwise might be. So our glute muscles can help keep our backs happy. So as we're going from bottom to top, we engage our glutes, use the muscles of our legs and our bums to pull us up. Let's do just one more here. And then we'll bring our hands back through center. All right, we did work folding forward. Let's do work, instead of shortening the hips, lengthening our hips. A little tricky for some of us, but the idea is that we approximate a lunge or warrior position in a chair. So that's a big split position. Some of us may prefer to get up out of our chair, and then maybe we're using our chair for balance instead. If we're staying seated in a chair, usually we again turn a little bit to the side, and one leg gets drawn out into a straightened position, either sort of to the side or in around behind us. Depending on who you are, you may also like to tuck the toes, but that's not usually the favorite variation. Usually the favorite variation feels a bit stable, more stable on a flat foot. And then we can pause here. Strength and stability. Just like we did with our other various poses, we can press into the heel of our bent leg to push us up a little bit so we're not just dumping all of our body weight on the chair. And then the foot of our straight leg, we're pressing in to the outer edge of that foot. And if the knee is bent in any of these different variations, we're still getting some length through the front of the hip and quad, so we're in good shape. So anywhere in that journey between bent leg and straight leg is a perfectly fine stopping point. Let's take one more round of breath here. So if anyone at home is standing up, you can simply switch legs, make sure you're still stable if you're holding on to something, and then here on the floor, we can switch. One leg is bent, we slide the other one out to be straight. Sliding it straighter in front might help too, and then out to the side, and then into that back range of motion. Again, maybe we want to be on the corner of the chair to have more stability under the pelvis as we slide our leg back. All right. We're here, we've figured ourselves out, we've fussed with our alignment. Let's spread the toes on the foot of our bent leg. Might help to spread our fingers to help be aware of that foot. Pushing into the sole of the foot, especially the heel. And if our straight leg foot is flat on the floor, we're pressing into the outer edge of the foot. Let me see if I can pull my foot back, there we go. And then let's see how we're doing while we're here. Often we're quite tight through the front of the hip, so it might be a lot of sensation. And then for other people who take my classes, they tell me they don't really feel anything while they're doing the pose, but then afterwards they realize that it's loosened stuff up. So it might feel quite subtle or quite obvious a stretch for you, and that is all part of the fun of doing yoga. One more round of breath here, making sure we're not dumping our body weight into the chair. We'll release, walking our feet in, coming back through center. And probably we're taking our feet back to the blocks again, if that was the option that you liked. Let's finish with our seated relaxation or meditation. Adding any final movements that you wanted to feel good. I will suggest often finishing with a twist. So we did our dynamic twist at the beginning. I said we would come back to a more still variation of it. So that goes like this. Again, we can start with our hands on our ribs and we'll turn and twist, pulling from our ribs the muscles of our abs and our back. And then we can actually use the back of the chair to help hold us here in a more flexible or more passive variation to work on our flexibility. And if that just seems really far back, we can do the same thing with the arm of the chair, if you have an arm of your chair, or we can turn sideways and bring our blocks with us. So what would that look like? We use our forward fold or our swan dive to bring our blocks with us. We sit tall. We can reach the arms up too to help us with our posture. Then we turn our ribs towards the chair and we can use the chair to help hold us here. Pausing for a few breaths, option to close the eyes. When we're ready to make our way back through center, we can walk ourselves back through. If you were twisting, let's use proper alignment and strength to switch our blocks, if that was your preference. Inhaling to sit tall, maybe stretching arms overhead to sit tall. We can use the arm of the chair or the back of the chair to bring ourselves into our twist. And it takes some time to kind of fuss with our props anytime we use props in a yoga practice, which I think works more on our patience than a lot of other practices, because we have to be patient with our props, patient with ourselves, patient with how everything lands. And that might mean that the more we practice, our poses start to look different, right? On the first side, I was pointed exactly to the side, and now I'm on a diagonal, and I think that actually feels more comfortable in this pose. And we're never stuck in a pose. If we get somewhere and it feels kind of uncomfortable, we can come out, we can reset, we can adjust ourselves however we need to. Okay, let's make our way into our final meditation. And like I said before, if there's ever any final pose that you want to add in that I've missed, that's okay. Please add it in now. And then when we're ready, we'll close our eyes and come back into our breath and check in with our body. So whenever you're done and ready to settle in, let's bring our awareness back to movement of breath. Seeing where in the torso we're most aware of movement of breath. Do we feel movement of belly, rib cage, underarms, chest, back? And let's encourage our lungs to stretch out to reach into all parts of our torso. And then sending our awareness into our bodies, head to toe, toe to head. Bringing to mind any areas of our body that feel particularly good right now, giving ourselves a little pat on the back, and using this as a reminder for why we stay consistent with our habits. And if we're not feeling so great today, we can use this as a moment for compassion, maybe bringing hand to heart, saying comforting words internally. And then let's all bring hands to heart center. Thank you so much for joining me here today for this little movement break in your day. I hope it was exactly what you needed it to be. From my light to yours, namaste.